Nutrition controversies and dietary patterns. No universal best diet. Dr. Gardner emphasizes that there is no one-size-fits-all diet, citing the resilience of diverse populations like the Tarahumara Indians high-carb, corn-based, and Alaskan Inuits high-fat, animal-based, who thrive without chronic diseases on their traditional diets. In contrast, the standard American diet, rich in processed foods, contributes to widespread health issues. Individual variability means some people thrive on high-protein, low-starch diets, while others do better with high-starch, lower-protein diets. Genetic adaptations, like lactose tolerance in Northern Europeans, are rare, with limited evidence for other dietary predispositions. Protein requirements. The podcast delves into protein needs, addressing debates over quantity and sources. Dr. Huberman references recommendations from experts like Dr. Gabrielle Lyon and Dr. Lane Norton, advocating for 1 gram of high bioavailability protein per pound of lean body weight daily. Dr. Gardner clarifies that the recommended dietary allowance RDA of 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight is set 2 standard deviations above the estimated average requirement 0.66 grams/kg, ensuring 97.5% of the population meets their needs. Nitrogen balance studies, conducted decades ago with conscientious objectors, established this baseline, though they are criticized for their artificial conditions, e.g., sedentary subjects in controlled environments. Most Americans consume 1.2 grams/kg or more without supplements, rendering the RDA somewhat irrelevant. Excess protein is not stored but converted to energy or carbs, with no significant benefit beyond maintenance needs. Plant vs. animal proteins. Dr. Gardner debunks the myth that plant proteins are incomplete, noting that all plants contain all 20 amino acids, albeit in different proportions. For example, grains are low in lysine and beans are low in methionine, but combining them yields a balanced profile. Soybeans have an amino acid profile comparable to animal proteins. A 2019 paper by Dr. Gardner illustrates that plants like beans, soy, and even broccoli are viable protein sources, supporting vegan bodybuilders and dispelling the need for complementation in diets with adequate protein intake. Meat remains superior in bioavailability and amino acid proportions, but plants are sufficient for most needs, especially when caloric intake is considered. Fiber and fermented foods. Fiber is critical for gut health and cancer prevention, while fermented foods e.g., kimchi, sauerkraut, yogurt reduce inflammation. A study with Dr. Justin Sonnenberg showed that 6 daily servings of low-sugar fermented foods increased microbial diversity and reduced 20 inflammatory markers, while high-fiber diets had mixed results, benefiting only those with high baseline microbial diversity. Dr. Huberman credits this study with inspiring his daily consumption of low-sugar fermented foods, noting improved digestion, energy, and immune function. School food as a public health lever. Challenges in school food systems. Dr. Gardner highlights the impact of poor school food on attendance, behavior, test scores, and teacher satisfaction. Hungry or inattentive students struggle academically, and unpalatable meals contribute to dissatisfaction among staff and students. The 2010 Healthy Hunger, Free Kids Act aimed to improve school meals but faced resistance due to tasteless options, underscoring the need for flavorful, nutritious food. Chefs in schools. Dr. Gardner collaborates with the Culinary Institute of America CIA through the Menus of Change initiative to integrate chefs into institutional settings like schools, hospitals, and hotels, where 50% of U.S. food is consumed. Chefs enhance meal appeal, making healthy, sustainable options palatable and scalable. This approach has led to happier staff, engaged students, and increased meal acceptance in diverse settings, including rural and urban districts across red and blue states. Eat Real and School certification. Dr. Gardner works with Nora Lur, founder of Eat Real, a nonprofit certifying K-12 schools and districts based on 10 parameters, including nutrition, local sourcing, and sustainability. Eat Real has reached 1 million students, with schools investing in new equipment, redesigning menus, and training staff. Certified schools report improved student satisfaction, staff morale, and community engagement, demonstrating scalability even in resource-constrained rural areas. Demand for certification is growing, with districts actively seeking Eat Real's expertise. Scalability and impact. Unlike small-scale farming, which faces land and economic constraints, school food reform is scalable. Chefs can serve hundreds of students efficiently, and Eat Real's model adapts to diverse contexts. Dr. Gardner notes that institutional food settings offer a unique opportunity to shift dietary habits at scale, influencing not just students but families and communities. Sustainable agriculture and the farm crisis, mega farms vs. diverse systems. Dr. Gardner critiques the dominance of mega farms producing monocrops like corn, soy, and potatoes, which benefit from economies of scale but degrade soil and reduce biodiversity. The decline of small dairy farms has led to suicides among farmers and a brain drain, with aging farmers and few successors due to economic pressures. Historical policies like Earl Butts's push for monocropping in the mid-20th century prioritized caloric output over diversity, undermining resilient agroecology that combined livestock and crops to buffer against crop failures. Middle-sized farms as a solution. Dr. Gardner advocates for middle-sized, diversified farms that integrate multiple crops and livestock, offering economic viability and environmental sustainability. Such farms could restore soil health, reduce reliance on concentrated animal feeding operations (CAFOs), and provide farmers with a decent living. This contrasts with mega farms' environmental toll and small farms' economic challenges. Regenerative farming. While regenerative farming is ideal, scaling it to feed the U.S. population is impractical due to land constraints. Dr. Gardner suggests reducing meat consumption and prioritizing sustainably raised meat, e.g., grass-fed, hormone-free, to balance health, cost, and environmental impact. The 2019 Eat Lancet Commission supports a low-meat, plant-heavy diet for global health and sustainability, urging high-consumption nations like the U.S. to cut back. Processed foods and industry influence ultra-processed foods. Dr. Gardner critiques ultra-processed foods for their low fiber, high caloric density, and additives like dyes and emulsifiers. The NOVA classification highlights cosmetic additives as problematic, though their long-term health impacts, e.g., cancer, are hard to study. He expresses moderate concern about dyes, noting regulatory challenges with the GRAS list, which includes thousands of additives, some benign, e.g., turmeric, and others obscure, beyond meat and impossible foods. Dr. Huberman questions the long ingredient lists of plant-based meats, associating them with processed foods. Dr. Gardner counters that these products have been reformulated to be cleaner, and that conventional meat contains indirect inputs like antibiotics, hormones, and feed crops. A study comparing Beyond Meat to red meat showed cardiometabolic benefits, e.g., lower LDL cholesterol, TMAO, weight, suggesting it as a healthier alternative to fast food burgers for the average American. Industry funding. Dr. Gardner acknowledges receiving industry funding, e.g., from avocado, soy, and Beyond Meat producers, but emphasizes that most of his work is NIH-funded. To mitigate bias, he employs equipoise, designing studies with high-quality versions of competing diets and using transparency measures like pre-registering trials and third-party data analysis. Key studies. DietFit's 2018. This NIH-funded study compared low-carb and low-fat diets in 600 participants, finding no average weight loss difference but significant individual variability. Neither insulin resistance nor genetic markers predicted outcomes, highlighting the need for personalized nutrition. SWAP, meat, Beyond Meat outperformed red meat in cardiometabolic outcomes, though it faced criticism from meat advocates. Keto vs. Mediterranean, both diets improved glycosylated hemoglobin, but keto raised LDL cholesterol while lowering triglycerides. Adherence to keto was less sustainable. Twin study involving 22 pairs of identical twins randomized to vegan or omnivore diets for 8 weeks. The vegan group showed lower LDL cholesterol, fasting insulin, and weight, with exploratory findings of longer telomere caps and younger epigenetic clocks. Anecdotal follow-up suggested varied adherence post-study, with some twins adopting more plant-based habits. Fermented foods and fiber. The Sonnenberg collaboration demonstrated that fermented foods increased microbial diversity and reduced inflammation, while fiber benefits depended on baseline microbial diversity. Protein flip and public perception. Protein flip concept. Dr. Gardner's protein flip reimagines meals with smaller meat portions, e.g., 2 ounces as condiments, centering vegetables, grains, and beans. This approach enhances taste, nutrition, and sustainability, aligning with Dr. Huberman's endorsement as a term that avoids the divisive plant-based label. Challenges with plant-based. The term plant-based is often misconstrued as veganism, despite Dr. Gardner's broader definition: mostly plants, some animal products. Efforts to rebrand e.g. plant forward, healthy omnivore have failed to gain traction, making protein flip a promising alternative. Policy and systemic reform collaboration with new administration. Dr. Gardner expresses willingness to advise any administration on nutrition and school food reform, emphasizing bipartisan potential. His work with Stanford School of Sustainability, which prioritizes farmers, ranchers, and fishers, aligns with broader environmental and economic goals. Food system reform. Dr. Gardner advocates for pressuring the food industry to reduce additives, increasing NIH funding for nutrition research, and promoting home cooking with affordable, high-quality ingredients. Chefs can provide accessible recipes to make healthy eating practical. Actionable insights. Individual experimentation. Experiment with diets to find what suits your needs, prioritizing high-quality, minimally processed foods. A protein flip approach: mostly plants, moderate animal products is broadly effective. School food reform. Support initiatives like Eat Real and menus of change to integrate chefs into schools, enhancing meal quality, student engagement, and staff satisfaction. Advocate for local, sustainable sourcing in school menus. Sustainable agriculture. Promote middle-sized, diversified farms and reduce reliance on mega farms and CAFOs. Choose sustainably raised meat when possible to minimize environmental impact. Fermented foods. Incorporate low-sugar fermented foods, e.g., kimchi, sauerkraut, plain yogurt daily to boost gut health and reduce inflammation, aiming for 2-6 servings based on accessibility and preference. Policy advocacy. Push for regulatory reforms to limit food additives and increase funding for independent nutrition research. Engage with policymakers to scale chef-driven school food programs and sustainable farming practices. Want to revolutionize your health and transform school food? Join Dr. Andrew Huberman and nutrition expert Dr. Christopher Gardner as they debunk diet myths, explore the power of fermented foods, and reveal how chefs are making school meals healthier, tastier, and sustainable, impacting kids, teachers, and the planet. The Huberman Lab podcast, hosted by Dr. Andrew Huberman, a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine, aims to disseminate science-based tools for everyday life. In this episode, Dr. Huberman interviews Dr. Christopher Gardner, a professor of medicine and director of nutrition studies at Stanford University, known for his rigorous, well-controlled studies on dietary interventions published in top journals like the Journal of the American Medical Association and the New England Journal of Medicine. The discussion delves into key nutritional controversies, including protein requirements, vegetarian versus omnivore diets, plant versus animal proteins, fiber, fermented foods, and the impact of food quality on health outcomes. Key themes and questions: is there a best diet? Dr. Gardner asserts there is no single best diet, highlighting human resilience across diverse dietary patterns. He cites examples like the Tarahumara Indians' hike, carb, corn-based diet, and Alaskan Inuits' hike, animal-based diet, both thriving without chronic diseases on their indigenous diets. However, the standard American diet, laden with processed foods, is problematic, leading to health issues as global diets converge toward convenience and processed options. Individual variability suggests some thrive on hype, protein, low-starch diets, while others do better with high-starch, lower-protein diets. The only well-established genetic dietary adaptation is lactose tolerance in Northern Europeans, with limited evidence for other genetic predispositions affecting diet suitability. Protein requirements: the podcast touches on protein needs, noting debates over quantity and sources animal vs. plant. Dr. Gardner and Dr. Huberman initially disagree but converge on tailored recommendations based on activity levels, age, and health status. Specific requirements are not detailed in the provided text, but are promised to be actionable and adaptable. Vegetarian, vegan, and omnivore diets: the discussion explores whether plant proteins are inferior to animal proteins. Dr. Gardner advocates for a whole food plant-based diet, which he clarifies does not equate to veganism or vegetarianism, but emphasizes plants with moderate animal product inclusion, 10–30%. This aligns with Michael Pollan's advice: eat food, not too much, mostly plants. A study comparing vegan and omnivore diets featured on Netflix showed vegans outperforming omnivores in cardiometabolic outcomes, though specifics are not elaborated. Fiber and fermented foods: fiber's role in supporting gut health and fermented foods' anti-inflammatory effects are highlighted as emerging areas of interest, though detailed findings are not provided in the text. Food quality over macronutrients: Dr. Gardner emphasizes food quality over mere macronutrient ratios or calories, arguing that high-quality, minimally processed foods yield better health outcomes. This is evident in his studies, which avoid comparing interventions to the standard American diet and instead match calories, macronutrients, and food quality across groups. Processed foods and additives: definition and concerns. Processed foods are critiqued for low fiber, high caloric density, and additives like dyes, emulsifiers, and flavorants. The NOVA classification, which categorizes foods by processing level, identifies cosmetic additives, e.g., dyes, emulsifiers, as problematic, though their health impacts are hard to study due to long-term outcomes like cancer. Dyes and regulation: Dr. Gardner expresses moderate concern about dyes, noting their difficulty to study in humans and reliance on animal models. He references the GRA's generally recognized as safe list, which includes thousands of additives, some benign, e.g., turmeric, pectin, and others with unpronounceable names, complicating regulation. Banning additives: while banning all additives could eliminate 60% of grocery store products, Dr. Gardner argues this is impractical without affordable, accessible alternatives. He cites examples like whole wheat bread, yogurt, and tomato sauce, which may be ultra-processed but are staples for budget-conscious families. Wheat and gluten intolerance: Dr. Gardner attributes widespread wheat sensitivity to the U.S.'s reliance on monocropped wheat, 90% of grain consumption lacking varietal diversity. He notes anecdotes of Europeans tolerating European bread but reacting to American bread, possibly due to differences in wheat or processing. Celiac disease affects a small percentage, but many report non-celiac gluten sensitivity. A study showed 50% of self-reported lactose-intolerant individuals failed objective tests, suggesting other factors e.g. small intestinal bacterial overgrowth may contribute to perceived intolerances. Industry funding and bias. Dr. Gardner acknowledges receiving funding from food industry sources e.g. avocado, soy, Beyond Meat, but most of his funding is from the NIH. He addresses bias concerns, noting that companies cannot influence data collection but may suggest study questions or request favorable phrasing in results e.g. highlighting no deleterious effects. To mitigate bias, he employs equipoise, designing studies with high-quality versions of competing diets e.g. Beyond Meat vs. organic, pasture-raised red meat, transparency measures like pre-registering trials on clinicaltrials. Gov and third-party data analysis further reduce influence. Key studies. DietFit's 2018, $8 million NIH-funded study with 600 participants compared low-carb and low-fat diets for weight loss. No average weight loss difference emerged, but individual variability was significant. Some lost 60 pounds, others gained 20. Neither insulin resistance nor a specific genetic marker predicted outcomes, suggesting other factors drive variability. Swap meat compared Beyond Meat to red meat, showing Beyond Meat's cardiometabolic benefits, though Dr. Gardner faced criticism from meat advocates. Keto vs. Mediterranean, both diets lowered glycosylated hemoglobin, but keto raised LDL cholesterol while lowering triglycerides more effectively. Adherence to keto was challenging, suggesting Mediterranean diets may be more sustainable. Reforming the food system. Culinary Institute of America CAA. Dr. Gardner collaborates with the CAA to leverage chefs' skills in institutional settings e.g. hospitals, schools, hotels, where 50% of U.S. food is consumed. The Menus of Change initiative integrates nutrition, business, and culinary expertise to create appealing, healthy, sustainable meals. Protein Flip advocates smaller meat portions e.g. 2 ounces as condiments, with vegetables, grains, and beans as plate centerpieces, enhancing taste and nutrition while reducing environmental impact. School Food. The 2010 Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act aimed to improve school meals but faced resistance due to unpalatable options. Chefs in schools successfully increased acceptance by making healthy food taste good. Naming and public perception. The term plant-based is problematic, often conflated with veganism despite Dr. Gardner's broader definition. A Google Food Lab session with 100 food industry experts failed to find a better term, highlighting the challenge of rebranding. Suggested alternatives like plant-forward, plant-centric, or healthy omnivore face similar issues as they may imply meat exclusion to the public. Global and environmental perspectives. Americans consume excessive meat compared to global averages, driven by cheap, industrially produced meat from concentrated animal feeding operations (CAFOs). The 2019 Eat Lancet Commission recommends a low-meat, plant-heavy diet for human and planetary health, suggesting some countries increase meat consumption for nutrition while high-consumption nations like the U.S. reduce it. Regenerative farming is ideal but impractical at scale due to land requirements. Less meat raised sustainably e.g. grass-fed, no hormones/antibiotics, balances health, cost, and environmental concerns. Actionable insights. Individual experimentation. People should experiment with diets to find what suits them, guided by high-quality, minimally processed foods. A whole food plant-based approach, mostly plants, some animal products, is broadly effective. Focus on taste. Collaborate with chefs to make healthy, sustainable food delicious and accessible, especially in institutional settings, to shift dietary habits. Policy and industry. Pressure the food industry to reformulate products, e.g., adopting European standards with fewer additives and increase NIH funding for nutrition research to reduce reliance on industry. Home cooking. Encourage families to prepare food using affordable, high-quality ingredients. Chefs can provide recipes and techniques to make this practical. Environmental consideration. Opt for less, better quality meat to reduce environmental impact while maintaining nutritional benefits.